and supporting organizations within ICANN. We're not going to make assumptions that you know what ICANN does or what ICANN is all about. So we're going to start, so this is going to be sort of like ICANN 101, and then we're going to basically explain why ICANN's work is important in the sphere of internet governance, what we do, and why you should get involved. I think anyone who uses the internet really should get involved at ICANN, but I'll let our speakers do that. So I'm going to ask each speaker to introduce themselves. So their name, maybe what you do, and then your ICANN affiliation. So we'll start with Lawrence.
Good day, everybody. So my name is Lawrence Olawale Roberts, and I am the CEO of Microboss Technologies. That's a small tech firm that operates out of the city of Abuja. Microboss happens to be a member of the business constituency within ICANN. And that's one of the reasons why I am seated here. I believe that as we progress, we'll have some other opportunities to share more about the BC, which is what we call the Business and Commercial Users Constituency. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. My name is Ines. I am from Tunisia. I am a teacher under the Ministry of Education, and I am Africa representative in the non-commercial users constituency, what we call NCUC in ICANN. Thank you.
My name is Sunday Folanyo. I've been involved with ICANN for the past 15 years. Started one of the first internet service provision business in Nigeria, ScanNet, in Ibadan. Was the thing I did in my early 20s. And thereafter, was involved in so many internet development efforts in Nigeria. More recently, the president of the Nigeria Internet Registration Association, NIRA, which is the CCTLD manager for Nigeria, and also directly affiliated to the CCNSO. CC means country code. In the past, I was a member of the board of AfriNIC, the African Address Registry, and I was a member of the board for 12 years before I stepped aside. And more recently, also a member of the Cybercrime Advisory Council for Nigeria. And I just love doing internet evangelism. Thank you.
I'm Henriette Esterhuizen, was Executive Director of Association for Progressive Communications for many years. Now I'm a consultant working for APC. Also involved in the African Declaration on Internet Rights and Freedoms, which some of you are involved in too. In ICANN, I'm a member of the non-commercial users constituency. But at the moment, and I'll talk more about that later, Ines will talk about what the non-commercial user constituency does. I'm also, along with Lawrence appointed by business and myself appointed by the non-commercial user constituency, part of something called ICANN NOMCOM, which is part of the multi-stakeholder process of ICANN. And we are called the Nominations Committee, and our role is to identify people for leadership positions in ICANN.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Caleb Ogundele. My day job is that I work in the university, and I also work with an academic network on internet policy. On the side, I also volunteer for the Internet Society as the program secretary, but in ICANN, my role is, my constituency is in NPOC, which is actually known for the not-for-profit operational consents. And basically what we try to talk about at the level of NPOC is more on DNS issues, things that affect not-for-profit organizations such as NGOs. So if you're probably having an NGO right now and you're not involved in the DNS industry, or you're having to engage with policy around the DNS issues, this is probably one of the constituencies in ICANN where you can actually thrive and have a space where you can engage more on the level of ICANN.
All right, thank you, everyone. All right, so we're going to start top and then drill down. So I'm going to ask, let's see, I think Sunday Folayo to maybe just quickly say, what internet governance is, and then I will ask somebody else to talk about what ICANN is. So what is internet governance for people who don't know what internet governance is?
Right. The internet started as a collaborative effort, different people doing different things to achieve results. And in the course of the evolution, it became clear that people need to work together more to get things done. Think of it more as our community development association, where you come together in the community to make sure things work. So you identify the problems, you identify the resources you have, you identify the processes that will work for you, and then you go ahead to make those things work for you. It may not work in other places. And I always like to use a classic joke to illustrate why we must be careful and why the need for internet governance. There's a joke about the executive that got employed by a software company, soft drink company, and was posted to an Arab country. And he had a wonderful idea of showing people why they need the soft drink. So he made 3 billboards. Somebody that was running became tired and then took the soft drink and could run faster. So he made 3 billboards: the tired man, the man drinking the soft drink, and the man sprinting off. And so they put it out there, and the first week, the sales of the company dived. Why? Because Arabs read from right to left. So, which means that you have a man running who took the soft drink and became tired. So the local condition, the local situation has a very big impact on governance. And so, internet governance tries to look at every factor, every player, every situation, and tries to find a way for things to work. And that's why the word consensus seems to bubble to the top as often as possible, because if you're going to take care of most things, you are going to be in serious trouble.
Thank you so much. So when you're talking about coming together to make things work, what are the things specifically?
Okay, let's take a look, for example, at the internet ecosystem, because without looking at the ecosystem, you won't see the need for governance. And let's pick it up from a typical home. So you see rats with the corner of your eyes. You can see rats running around. Where did the rats come from? They came from outside because you have leftover food every evening. So perhaps if you agree that everybody should finish their food so that there is no leftover food, perhaps there will be no rats. Now, how can people finish their food when mommy believes it would not be right not to feed everybody well? So mommy dishes quite a lot of food. Now, you want to persuade mommy to reduce the food she gives. How can she explain to neighbors that her children look skinny? And then, of course, there is dad who's complaining that, hey, can we make sure that we remember the children in other less privileged part of the world who don't have something to eat? So this family needs to sit down. There's a case of food governance, all right? So they would sit down, they discuss, they agree. So similarly, on the internet sphere, you need to know what the internet ecosystem is. there are governments, there are individual users, there are businesses, there are charities, there are the future students who need to learn, there are researchers, people like Caleb, for example, who are trying to see what's the optimal way of getting things to work. So many ideas get brought together, and the role of those in the internet governance space is how do we distill things and make all these things relevant and functional. So you're also going to find out, and I see the panel will talk a lot about that as we move on, that there's a lot of interrelationships, all right? So if you pick, for example, the academia, you pick the industry. The industry is trying to make the internet useful. But where does the technologies come from? The technologies come from the research that is done by the academia. So, do you just take research done in Nigeria and carry it to the US or Israel and turn into a Wi-Fi access device? Then we begin to talk of intellectual property rights. Then the lawyers come in. So it's a very big world out there and so much to deal with.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking at the different users, the different people who use the internet, and then how this translates into the kind of devices they need, and I guess possibly the kind of information that flows through.
Absolutely. It's a big world out there.
Okay, the whole ecosystem. All right, so now we're going to talk about ICANN. And Riaz, could you please give us a little bit a background about what ICANN is and what ICANN does?
ICANN's primary role is to manage domain names. So that's DNS, the domain name system. And I mean, it's something that every internet user depends on and connects with. It's that paradigm.org or whatever your domain is. If it's at a country code, then, and you can hear more about that, Sunday will tell you more about that, it's the .ng domain. And that's managed from within Nigeria and through a relationship with ICANN, but not primarily managed by ICANN itself. But what we call the top-level domains. Has anyone ever here heard the term TLD before? So top-level domains are those domains that are assigned by ICANN and managed by ICANN, not the actual selling of the domains, but assigning. That's why ICANN stands for the corporation for assigning names or assigned names and numbers. And that's the primary role of ICANN, is to establish the rules by which, the criteria by which people would bid and make a bid for managing a particular top-level domain, and then also how that then needs to be sold to customers, and that ecosystem of so there's a broader internet governance ecosystem, but even just the domain name system has an ecosystem of its own that involves, I'm going to name them and I'm going to ask for help in explaining them. The contracted party. So that's a really important thing to understand in ICANN. ICANN has these constituencies that you've talked about, the business constituency, the non-commercial users constituency, and the not-for-profit organization operational constituency. But then there are also the contracted parties, companies like VeriSign or Affilias, for example. Affilias is a company that has the right to resell, not resell, but to manage .info. So they also have a relationship with ICANN. And that's essentially what ICANN does. It manages the rules of procedure, but then also the assigning of the rights. I think the easiest analogy for me always is to think about a regulator in the way that your Nigerian telecoms regulator would grant a license to MTN to provide mobile services. If there's new spectrum, then they would get a license to operate with that particular spectrum. And ICANN works in a similar way, except it's top-level domains that it creates rules for and then assigns and monitors.
All right, so within ICANN we have the contracted parties, so the organizations, actors with which ICANN has contracts. They do something, they fulfill certain obligations. And then we have the non-contracted parties. So within the non-contracted parties, we have the GNSO, CCNSO, and ASO. I'm actually a newbie to ICANN. I've just been in ICANN for like about a year or so. So it's always a learning process. And ICANN is one of those places where you hear so many acronyms that initially it can be like people are speaking a totally different language. So I'm going to ask Lawrence to talk about the non-contracted parties. So give us an understanding of what that is.
Yeah, finally I get to talk. Don't mind me. So to start with, I'll just give a brief overview of how ICANN is structured. But basically, ICANN itself is a not-for-profit organization.
Yes.
And don't let that fool you. Not-for-profit doesn't mean that they don't have a big budget. I mean, for every domain name that is purchased, ICANN gets a very, very little income from there, and that could trickle to a lot. But ICANN has a very limited mandate. They have a remit that seeks to ensure that the internet is safe, is scalable, and interoperable. In other words, a lot of things can build on that. Now within this big ecosystem that we are talking about, we have some organizations that have a contract with ICANN. Now, they have a contract because they are providing some services to the public, and ICANN has a duty to ensure that those services are delivered as the way they have agreed on, in the RAA. So these are the registries. The registries are the guys that own .com, .net, .info. Today we have over 1,000, going to close to 2,000 TLDs, new GTLDs. So you'll find .vip in the market, .global. All those companies that provide these services are contracted by ICANN to do this. And then we also have registrars. The registrars are companies you will know, like GoDaddy, Hugo that provide services, most times online, where you can go and buy a domain name. Those companies also have a contract with ICANN because they would want to maintain certain standards. Now, with that said, if the registries sit down and say, "Oh, we own the TLDs," and the registrars on their own end say, "Well, you can buy these TLDs to us. If we don't make it available, you can't pick it up." Who buys it? So a lot of businesses thrive on all kinds of internet services. A lot of educational institutions, a lot of people. So there are different channels that have to service this whole network, and because of that, their interest also has to be taken care of. So while we have the registries and the registrars bundled into one big house called the Contracted Party House in GNSO, every other person else, the businesses, which is one of the places where I play, you find businesses like we had here, Google is a member of the BC, we have Facebook as a member of the BC, we have a lot of big companies because everybody, ICANN is one place where policy is being designed to govern how the internet works and to help ensure that everybody's interest is taken care of. So everyone is interested to see that policies that are coming out of these discussions, which will have one way or the other of impacting on them, could be skewed to their interest. So we have, aside from the contracted party house, within the GNSO block, we have the non-contracted party house. And that particular house is also split into two. I try not to confuse us, so I'm trying to make it very easy. So within the non-contracted party house, this is a place where you don't have a contract with ICANN. ICANN can't go and meet Google, for instance. So ICANN can't come to Microboss, which is my company, to say, we want you to operate in X, Y, Z way. We don't have a contract, so they don't have a mandate to tell us what to do to a large extent. But what they do impacts on our business. So we have the, so within the non-contracted party house, we have the commercial stakeholder group. Under the commercial stakeholder group, you find the business constituency, you find the ISPCPs, and you also find the intellectual property guys, and then we now have the non-commercial, where we find the non-profits, MPOC, the lawyers are all there. So let me break this down. My first meeting into ICANN, sitting in a room and people are getting to introduce themselves. And my mindset was, this is a place where, ICANN should be a technical place. We should be talking about the internet, engineers, and all that. And people are getting to introduce themselves, and lawyers were introducing themselves. I'm a lawyer. In fact, we had more lawyers, more IP guys. And I'm wondering what is happening here. This is supposed to be a technical, but by the end of the week, I got to understand why everybody has a role to play. If you're a lawyer, there's a space for you. If you're an activist, there's a place for you. There's a home for you to fit, within ICANN. If you're all you want to do is policy, so basically that's the way ICANN is structured. And if we're moving out of that, we have the end users. Everybody that uses the internet falls under at large. Your interests can be taken care of there. All the country codes, CCTLDs, we have .ng, .ke, all those guys fall under the CCNSO. Not regulated to a large extent by ICANN, but they have a home there. And definitely you need government at the table, because most of the policies that have to be generated have a way of impact. If you really want it to impact on a global scale, you have to also carry the government along. And so government also have a home, so to say, which is the GAC. I think I'll stop here. Please.
Thank you. That was a lot, but I think that was a really good explanation of the structure of ICANN. So Lawrence spoke about the commercial and non-commercial constituencies. And so, and he spoke a bit about commercial. So I'm going to ask Ines to talk about the non-commercial. What exactly, is the non-commercial constituency? What does it have anything to do with domain names?
Okay. Thank you very much. I will follow on Lawrence. Lawrence, when he went the first time to the conference, he was like, what is happening? What is going on here? Where are the IT people? And then for me, when I attended, I was like, where is the education? Where are the teachers? Where are the academia, etc.? And then I met with someone from what you call the GAC. GAC is the government. And he was like, where are you all doing here? We are the government. We decide by the end of the day. I was like, okay, I think I need to understand more. That's why ICANN, the Internet Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers, the idea of ICANN is very tightly linked to the idea of the multi-stakeholder model. You will hear this word a lot, and and also by the process of it, which is bottom up rather than top down. This is very, very important. If you don't have in your ethics, in your mentality, the idea of multi-stakeholder and bottom up and discussion and collaborative decision making, I don't think ICANN is the right place. You have to reach consensus, you have to agree, etc. You have to discuss things. So this is the overall idea about ICANN. So in ICANN, there are many, let's say, groups to make it easier for you. There is, as I said, the government. There is what we call also, there is a group which has an advisory role. It's called at large, ALAC, sorry, and there is a very key group which is called GNSO. GNSO is the Generic Name Supporting Organization. And at this place, they make policies. And ICANN is about policies related to domain names. And the GNSO, under the GNSO, there is, as we said, there are the contracted parties house and there is a non-contracted parties house. And the contracted parties house, there are the registries and registrars, and the non-contracted, we have the commercial and non-commercial. In the commercial, we have our friend from the business constituency, and from the non-commercial, there is myself, Ines, and there is Caleb and Henriette. So in the non-commercial, there is what we call the non-commercial stakeholder group, and also you, sorry, the non-commercial stakeholder group. Under NCSG, there is NCUC and MPOC. I am from NCUC. NCUC is a constituency. We work on for the benefit of the non-commercial interests. How do we work? Many people ask me, are you like an organization? Do you do like field projects? Do you help in this and that? No, unfortunately, this is not what ICANN does. ICANN does policies. So NCUC works on policies through what we call the GNSO Council. So we work on issues like freedom of speech, access. We work on topics, what we call the EPDP, the Expedited Policy Development Process. We work on topics like privacy, human rights. We work also on dispute resolution. So we have volunteers all over these topics. They work on all these topics. So this is the non-commercial users constituency. To put it simply, just to have, so that you have an idea about the structure of NCUC. NCUC, we have a chair, and we have 5 representatives of the regions. And all this is made by voting. It's not, as we say, it's bottom up. So we have a chair, and we have a representative from Africa, a representative from Europe, North America, Latin America, and Asia Pacific. Okay, and Australia, sorry, Australia and Asia Pacific. So this is the leadership positions. And also we have a policy council, we have a finance committee, so it's very, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. So how can I join NCUC or NPOC, or how can I join ICANN in general? I think you don't necessarily need to travel, seriously. You can, the good thing about ICANN is that there is always remote participation. So first, try to attend one of the conferences remotely. I advise you to try to find a topic that interests you. Focus on a topic, an issue that interests you. If you're going to focus on all the constituencies, you're going to get lost and you would like to run, just run. So focus on an issue, a topic that interests you, freedom of speech, access, I don't know, for example, geographic names, etc. And then try to find the constituency that can help you or which is closer to you. Then you can go to icann.org, find that constituency website, and then apply to join. When you apply, you can choose either to join as an individual or as an organization. Okay, so this is what I wanted to explain. So this is basically what is NCUC, and we will talk later more.
Thank you so much, Ines. And Ines is the Africa rep on NCUC. She forgot to mention that. Okay, so non-commercial is NCUC, the non-commercial users, and NPOC, non-profit operational concerns constituency. So what's the difference between NPOC and NCUC? Caleb.
That's actually a very difficult question. But I would actually like to respond that we are the rebel, the activists. So we are actually the guys who are more of the NGOs, and you know what, basically NGOs are always the guys that like to fight about something they are passionate about, things that they like. Some of those things that we like at the level of NPOC that we like to talk about is about domain name abuses. We like to talk about issues around intellectual property, cybersecurity, privacy. So I'm trying to relate this with the audience because I know we have more of digital rights advocates here in the room. So if you're actually looking for a place to talk about issues that revolves around DNS policies and all of that, NPOC is actually a place for you where you can thrive. And basically, some of the issues we also try to lend our voice into is the issue of the GDPR. One way or the other, the GDPR tends to affect all of us, both at the level of the DNS level, the names and numbers, because one way or the other, as an organization, if you're a registrant, you tend to put your name in the WHOIS database, right? And sometimes some of you don't like some of your private information, rather. Sometimes some of you don't like this private information in the wrong hands. You probably don't want it to get into the wrong hands, and then in the case of where a domain name squatter is actually waiting for you, we've always had this conversation with Reverend Sunday Folayan, so I'm sure you recall some of our conversation on this, where you have a domain name squatter trying to wait for you to finish your, or rather, you registered your own domain, and it's going to expire over a period of time. And issues around that, where a domain name squatter then comes in and then steals your own domain from you. Those are issues that we like to talk about and have policies about. Now, when Lawrence was actually speaking, he was saying that BC is where we tend to, where the Googles are and all of that. So at the level of MPOC, decisions and policies that are being made at the level of BC and the GAC, which is the Government Advisory Council, we at the NCUC, more of the end users, as well as the NGOs and all of that, tend to serve as the conscience of the people, which I would want to put in that perspective. We tend to serve as a conscience of the people, whereby we try to fight for your human right perspective. We try to fight not just for your human right perspective, your privacy as well. And quite a number of things that we get to do at MPOC. And perhaps if you really want to know more about MPOC, you could probably visit their website, which is mpoc.org, and you get more information. Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb. And we have some MPOC flyers here, and we'll have some at the registration, so you can always get some. Yes, please, Henriette.
So just to give you a few examples of issues that are being debated in ICANN, because the one thing you do need to know about ICANN is that it's bottom-up, it's multi-stakeholder, it does not mean it's harmonious. There's a lot of contestation, different interests, and a lot of debate. And what this complex multi-stakeholder structure does is to create a way for that debate to play itself out. So one of the battles that the non-commercial stakeholder group, NPOC and NCUC, has been fighting is human rights. As Caleb said, this is the Digital Rights Forum. And after years and years of trying to convince governments and the business constituencies and the contracted parties that human rights applies to ICANN, finally, when there was a revision of the ICANN bylaws, there's now a mention of human rights in the ICANN bylaws. And what this group has also started to do is to look at the human rights impact of ICANN decisions. And this is really quite a game changer. Imagine if your national telecoms regulator had to do a human rights impact assessment every time it assigns a license to an operator, every time it revises the interconnection rate, whatever. It is trying to gradually build human rights considerations into the day-to-day decision-making of ICANN. It's not easy, and the process is only just starting. The other issue which is really contested is the one that Caleb mentioned, which is about privacy. The GDPR, the European General Data Protection Regulation, applies very much to ICANN because ICANN and the contracted parties, the registries and the registrars, hold so much data. Because every time you buy, by the way, those people who own domains are called registrants. That's the three R's in ICANN, the registries and the registrars on the one side, and then the registrants. When you give your data, that data is actually at the moment, or has been, publicly available. So I don't know if anyone's heard of the who is debate. And anyone could go on the internet and say who is paradigm.ng, and you'll get the address and name of who registered that domain. I had a death threat. I received a death threat about 10, 15 years ago because someone wrote me a letter, snail mail, in my mailbox saying, we know where you live, we know your family is there, we're going to come and kill you because you have allowed a domain of a Colombian in Latin America terrorist supporting organization to be on the internet. So there's a debate about whether that information should be private or not. So the non-commercial user constituency feels very strongly that should be private, but many people in the business constituency feels that it should be open and public. And
we have a
government.
No, government.
Government for security.
And some people in government. So
Yes, it's exciting.
But that's exactly, and that is the power of ICANN, that you can take these very specific issues. They seem quite narrow and quite technical, but if you look at them through a public interest, public policy eye, whether you are business or non-commercial, there are implications. Implications for your business interest, implications for your public interest. And ICANN creates a framework for you to debate those issues and reach consensus. And I think just the final thing about consensus, in ICANN we talk about rough consensus. That doesn't mean agreement. It means getting to a point where you can live with a decision, even if you don't fully agree with it. And then sometimes next year you'll come back and try and reopen the debate.
Yes, very much like how life is, as you. Okay, so you talk about the opportunity to actually debate and actually have an input in issues of the day. So how do we do this? We've heard about PDPs, Ines, and everyone else has talked about policy and contributing to policy. How does that happen in ICANN? It's sounds complex, and how, as someone who's coming into ICANN, maybe for the first time, I'm an end user, but I feel passionate about this issue, how do I get involved in the policy development process? Who would like? Okay, Ines, thank you.
I will not really go into details because I don't want to confuse people. But to put it simply, ICANN issues what we call public comments. ICANN opens public topics or issues for public comments. It means that anyone who has an opinion about that can contribute and express his or her opinion on that specific topic. That's why it is bottom up. But the best thing actually to be more effective, this is what I would really advise, is that to join a constituency. Join what we call working groups. Because at that point you would be able to make like structured and convincing public comments that can have really an impact on the policies. And this is what I can say about public comments and how you can contribute. After that, I'm not very sure about the process, but after that I think that it goes to the board of ICANN, yes, and then also the board then sends it to the GAC. I think the GAC has a very important,
The GAC advises the board, and the other advisory groups, the at-large advisory councils advises the board, but the board makes the final decision. So if the GAC, if governments have more influence, it's not because they have more access, it's because they are governments.
Okay, please, Mr. Folayan.
Okay, one very interesting thing with the ICANN model is that the constituencies are not isolated islands. So when there is an issue, it moves across all constituencies. Even if a constituency is not interested, someone from another constituency will come and say, hey, we're having this discussion. This matter is important. We think you should be interested. Or the constituency itself may go to where the issue is being discussed to say, hey, we know you are discussing this. It's very important to us. We want to be a part of the discussion. And so all constituencies have the ability to appoint liaisons to other constituencies. And other constituencies also appoint liaisons in return. And these liaisons have insight into what is going on, and they take back what they think is interesting to the constituency that appointed them as liaison to another constituency. And then at the end of the day, everybody gets to have a say on every issue. And by the time the board, which again asks people from practically every constituency, is making a call, they're making a call that seems to meet consensus. And I like the way Aret explained it. You really don't, you can live with it. It doesn't mean it's the best, but for now, that's what we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, Lawrence.
Yes. I'd like to add that in terms of policy development within ICANN, anybody can start a debate. it doesn't have to start from, I mean, it's bottom up, and that's the beauty of the multi-stakeholder system. If something is a concern to you, and you present it to your constituency, for instance, and there is enough traction, there is enough concern, maybe within your constituency, it could start from there. I mean, from the mailing lists, it could start from just sending a mail out, people get to respond back and front, and then you develop or design a statement. And that statement could be shared with, maybe in my group, for instance, we are the commercial stakeholder group. So if you want to start a policy discussion, the very best thing to do is to find out if the ISP, CP, and the IPCs, for instance, share a similar view. And if they are able to, if you're able to get traction within the others, then it's likely that the GNSO can take this as a topic for debate. So the beauty about the ecosystem is it's not like you're waiting for government to, I mean, looking at the reverse system where from the up there, this is the direction we want to go, and it trickles down. Within ICANN is a bottom-up process, and anyone could, start up a discussion that could snowball into something, really big, such that the entire community
gets behind it. Yeah. So you could either start a discussion and then have it snowball if there's enough traction, or you can respond to open comments. And I think there are a few that are open right now that may be of interest to people in this room. I think one is one that MPOC is trying to put together a comment on the lifting of the fees of the .org.
Specifically for NGOs, this actually affects all of you. So please try and go to ICANN's website. You'll see a link where you find open or public comments. Look at the conversation around there, and if you have any public opinion or any personal opinion you want to share, please contribute as well.
Sorry, are you saying that we shouldn't make money from why we're running the organization if we're not going to make money?
Okay, so now you see the reason why NPOC tends to fight the business guys, because they are increasing the prices of .org, and at the level of NGO, we are actually concerned that the prices of dollar is actually going up, and for us in Nigeria, actually.
The business has to be sustainable.
So,
you need
you
need to make money. This
is not a debate. Let's just move on.
Okay.
So in the process, yes, we can come to a rough consensus. Okay, so so Mr. Folanyi, you said that no one is an island, and so I actually wanted to just pick up on that before we open it up for questions. You can be a member of more than one constituency. So I'm a member of MPOC and also AFRALO, which is the African RALO, yeah, Regional at Large Organization. Caleb, exactly.
NCUC, NPOC, and also an ALS under AFRALO.
Okay. And Riet, you are NCUC and non-com.
Non-com. So,
Okay.
In fact, I think my organization is a member of MPOC at one point. So I'm on something called the Nominations Committee, and Lawrence. And we are appointed by our constituencies. We don't represent them, and that's very important. So NCUC appointed me to be a non-com, and BC appointed Lawrence. And our role as non-com is to identify people for leadership positions. And we work with the at-large advisory council. We identify people for at-large, for the ICANN board, which is really important, and for the GNSO, the General Names Supporting Organization, which is the policy-making arm of ICANN. NOMCOM is not the only way of people going into leadership positions. They can be appointed through their own constituencies or advisory bodies. But our role is really to find independent people that are more than just someone from business or someone from civil society or someone from the technical community. People that add diversity, gender diversity, geographic diversity, political diversity, technical expertise, areas of expertise that might not be inside ICANN already. And we do a very complex process. Lawrence and I have been slaving away, opening applications, doing outreach, and then reviewing those applications and interviewing people and identifying people. So it's quite an expensive process, you know, for bringing people into leadership positions. But it's a demonstration of the sort of I think the commitment in ICANN to keep this multi-stakeholder structure as diverse as possible, and to also create independence and put independent people into leadership positions. And the geographic diversity, actually, I feel is a huge challenge in ICANN. If you look at the ICANN board at any time, you'll find that it's generally dominated by people from Europe and North America. And I think if it wasn't for the at-large, the membership structures, and for NOMCOM, you probably would not have anyone there from the rest of the world. So, you know, ICANN is a multi-stakeholder place. It's not necessarily always an even-handed place. You know, I'm saying that, you know, it's not an easy place, actually. And I think what we try to do as NOMCOM is to bring more of that diversity, to bring more awareness into ICANN of what's going on in the rest of the world by appointing people into leadership positions that bring that awareness, that bring that knowledge. And maybe Lawrence wants to add something.
Yes, Lawrence, can you tell us what does it take to become a leader in ICANN?
So the secret, I would say, is engagement. ICANN is a very unique ecosystem. It deals basically with the names and the numbers. The names being domain names and, you know, IP addresses. But there are so many issues going on at the same time that sometimes it could be very, very confusing. So the key to engagement is focusing on maybe a particular topic of discussion. We've had the who is going on now for years on end, 7 years, and just when you think that you have your hand on something, you know, the GDRP brings up a whole new issue, and we have to trash everything that has been done over the last, you know, 5 years, 5 going to 7 years.
Because business wouldn't listen to the non-commercial
You know.
stakeholder group. If you did, ICANN would not be in trouble with who is.
And so we have to trash that because, you know, so there are lots of, okay, so don't let me go there. So once it comes to, so basically it comes to engagement. For us in this part of the world is a very unique ecosystem. So you need to understand where you want to play. If you are a non-for-profit, for instance, for non-for-profits, you have different issues that are ongoing. Some people just want to focus on privacy issues. You know, for business, we have all kinds of issues that need to be sorted out. If you look at the GDRP, we have cause for, you know, legitimate use. All of us know what's it called, antivirus. I mean, everybody uses an antivirus, is that not so? The antivirus companies, or companies, you know, that machine these things out, also to a large extent uses the database, you know, that ICANN has. And so when we're talking about all forms of use, it's a big thing. But for those of us on this divide, the key is not trying to follow everything, because you will get lost. So it's easier when you just follow, maybe due to the place where you work, or based on your career, or based on an area of interest in the future. You just look at the ecosystem, you follow discussions, because there are different groups that are ongoing. Everybody, you step into a room, they might be talking about universal access. You step into another room where the GDPR used to be a hot topic. Now we have the EPDP going on. You step into another room, there's another discussion going on. So if you want to follow every discussion, you get confused. The key is just focus on some aspects that is of interest. There's no crime in doing that, and try to understand what stage they're in. Now, ICANN is a place where, you know, they have like 3 public meetings, aside the mailing list discussions that are ongoing. So if you step into an ICANN room, a place where discussions are ongoing, you don't, as a newbie, you might be expecting a fresher course. You won't get that. because guys are going to continue discussing from where they stopped, maybe on the mailing list or in the last meeting. So you have to be able to follow the flow, try to spend some time to understand, maybe read up the archives, what's been going on before this particular point, and just make a determination, to whether you understand it or not. Just keep following the process until you get a hang of it.
Yes, so fake it until you make it. There's I Can Learn. I Can Learn is an online platform, quite good, and so you can take courses there. There's also another way for bringing newcomers into ICANN, and several people seated here are fellows. So maybe Caleb, you tell us about the fellowship. I know Caleb, Lawrence, Ines,
Okay. So in another role within ICANN, maybe I would say it's not a constituency, but I'm also an ICANN fellow, like they usually say, once a fellow. And 3 people on this panel are actually fellows, and I can count another 3 within seated within this place who are fellows. We have Buki, we have my friend from
Can you wave?
Liberia. You're an ICANN fellow.
Okay, hi.
So now you might have been wondering that how can you get engaged? Now for NGOs, which I'm going to focus on specifically right now, we usually have these funding issues, right? And we can attend some of these meetings, fiscal meetings. So how can we get funding to attend these fiscal meetings? First of all, understand what they are talking about. Go to the mailing list, attend webinars, use ICANN Learn, understand the basics, and then when you have these prerequisites, you can then go to the ICANN website where you see information about fellowships. Now, there is a new and improved section of that fellowship right now, which is asking very difficult questions. So I try to apply again as a fellow, and I was finding it very difficult, despite the fact that I have been in the game for a while, because it was asking me about how much I have done something specific, and I had to start bringing out from the archive what I have done within ICANN community. So you first of all need to start engaging before you attend that physical meeting. The best resources which I would also suggest that you can learn the basics so that you won't get confused with all these acronyms that we've getting you bored with, because I'm pretty sure most of you will be wondering what is BC, what is GNSO, what is this, and then you'll be like, these guys are just speaking gibberish. So, because it's a problem also on multi-stakeholderism in Africa, I think we should add Swahili, Yoruba, and all of that to the United Nations language that we should have in most of these meetings. We usually don't have these things. And so probably if it's there, I'm sure we can get a better understanding of some of the acronyms. So in other words, go to the website and check the fellowship information from icann.org. That's where you can get more information about the fellowship.
Thank you. Ines wants to add one more thing.
Yes, thank you very much, Caleb. Myself, I was also a fellow, and this introduced me actually to the ICANN word, etc. So fellowship program is really interesting because you don't feel overwhelmed. You have the necessary information coming towards you rather than going to every single room and every single working group. If you're gonna learn too much or try to learn too much, seriously, you're gonna be overwhelmed and you're not gonna like it. So fellowship program is could be a good step for you. Just go to the ICANN.org website. You will find the application, the next application. I think it's closed for the Canada meeting, but also there is the ICANN Learn platform where you can have the basics about ICANN, etc., and the working groups. Also, a lot of people ask me, does ICANN do some capacity building? Yes, it does, but in an indirect way, let's say. Okay, so for example, right now I am in the Secretariat of the Middle East School on Internet Governance. We are organizing Internet governance schools every year since 2009, I think. For me, I joined 3 years ago, and this year is going to be in Africa, in Rabat, in Morocco. So these schools, they last for 5 days, and we have teachers teachers and academia and technical and people coming from all sectors. We have actually a multi-stakeholder table during those schools, and they try to give you the basics about ICANN and about the internet governance, etc. So when people ask me about ICANN, does it do some capacity building? Yes, it does. But you have to do to search for those opportunities and to try to learn also by yourself.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh,
Can I just make a quick comment? I know you want to open it. But I think there's also a tension with this, because there's a tendency in ICANN for people from the Global South to be fellows and participants, and people from the Global North to be decision makers. So the challenge for everyone is to start off as a fellow, but do not stay a fellow, because they quite like it that way. I think those with the existing power quite like having the Global South as fellows and the Global North as deciders.
thank you.
Before you move on,
We need to open to the audience.
yes, we will, but let me say that there's a shortcut to participating.
Okay.
And the shortcut, or shortest cut, is to be a member of NERA.
Okay, nice plug.
NERA is a small form of ICANN,
Okay.
because we're a multi-stakeholder, bottom-up organization. Everything that happens in ICANN happens in NERA. And the good news is that you get to now see everything from the ICANN side. So it's a very inexpensive way of getting to boot yourself to understand what's going on without first traveling to an ICANN meeting. By the time you get to an ICANN meeting, you understand how things work, because what Ariel said is very, very important. One of the reasons why a lot of us love going is because they are sponsored trips. And as a fellow, you get paid. So to keep going, it is cheaper to remain a fellow. But that's a disadvantage, because then your participation is limited.
Yeah.
But if you operate within your domain like Nigeria, you become very financially strong. You start, say an ISP, it's very, very profitable. You can pay yourself to an ICANN meeting. Then the world is opened to you.
Thank you so much. So
Sorry.
it's important.
Just